Hey there! Tonight, we're going to explore the remarkable stories behind 50 everyday objects you probably never think twice about. Some were invented by accident, others were considered immoral when they first appeared. These are the hidden stories of the things that quietly shape your daily life. If you've heard another theory, feel free to share in the comment section. Now, let your mind and body relax and let's explore tonight's topic together. 1. Surprisingly, the lighter was invented before the match. The first lighter, called the Dobereiner lamp, appeared in 1823, a full 3 years before the friction match came along in 1826. This early lighter used hydrogen gas and a platinum catalyst to create flame, a chemical reaction that fascinated scientists of the era. The design was clunky and dangerous by modern standards, requiring careful handling of flammable gas, but it proved that controlled fire could be generated through chemistry rather than friction alone. German chemist Johann Wolfgang Dobereiner created it as a laboratory instrument, never imagining it would evolve into the pocket lighters we carry today. The irony is striking. We tend to assume matches, being simpler, came first, but human innovation often takes the complicated route before finding simplicity. 2. The microwave oven was discovered entirely by accident when Percy Spencer, an engineer working with radar technology for Raytheon in the 1940s, noticed something unusual in his pocket. A chocolate bar he'd been carrying had melted, and he realized the magnetron, the vacuum tube generating microwaves for radar systems, was the culprit. Intrigued rather than annoyed, Spencer began experimenting, placing popcorn kernels near the magnetron and watching them pop. He then tried an egg, which promptly exploded in a colleague's face when the internal pressure built too rapidly. According to company records, Spencer's curiosity transformed a military technology into what would become one of the most common kitchen appliances worldwide. The first commercial microwave, called the Radarange, weighed over 750 pounds and cost about $5,000, a far cry from the compact countertop models we use today. 3. Bubble wrap started its life as a complete failure in the world of interior design. In 1957, engineers Alfred Fielding and Mark Chavan attempted to create a textured wallpaper by sealing 2 shower curtains together with air bubbles trapped between them. The wallpaper idea flopped. Nobody wanted bumpy walls in their homes. The pair then tried marketing it as greenhouse insulation, but that didn't catch on either. It wasn't until IBM began shipping its first computers that bubble wrap found its true calling. The company needed something to protect delicate computer parts during transport, and the air-filled cushioning proved perfect for absorbing shocks and preventing damage. By the 1960s, Sealed Air Corporation had turned the failed wallpaper into a packaging revolution. Today, an estimated 300 feet of bubble wrap could circle the Earth at the equator if you laid it end to end, all from an invention that started as decorative plastic. 4. Post-it notes exist because a scientist at 3M created what seemed like a useless adhesive. In 1968, Dr. Spencer Silver was attempting to develop a super strong adhesive for the aerospace industry, but instead produced a weak, pressure-sensitive glue that could stick to surfaces and be easily removed without leaving residue. For years, nobody knew what to do with this failed adhesive. It was too weak for any practical application anyone could imagine. Then, in 1974, another 3M scientist named Arthur Fry was singing in his church choir and growing frustrated with bookmarks that kept falling out of his hymnal. He remembered Silver's weak adhesive and realized it could create a bookmark that would stay put but not damage pages. After years of development and convincing 3M management that people would actually buy sticky note paper, Post-it notes launched in 1980. They became one of the company's best-selling products, proving that sometimes the most useful inventions come from solving problems nobody knew they had. 5. Elisha Otis didn't invent the elevator, but he invented the one thing that made people willing to step inside one. Before 1852, elevators existed but were powered by steam or operated by hand, and they had one terrifying flaw. If the rope broke, the platform would plummet to the ground. Otis, a mechanic in a New York bedstead factory, designed a safety brake using a wagon spring mechanism that would automatically engage if tension was lost in the hoisting rope. To prove his invention worked, he staged one of history's most dramatic product demonstrations at the 1854 World's Fair in New York's Crystal Palace. Otis stood on an elevator platform high above the crowd, ordered an assistant to cut the rope with an axe, and as gasps filled the hall, the platform dropped only inches before the safety brake locked into place. Otis calmly announced, "All safe, gentlemen. All safe." That single demonstration revolutionized architecture and made skyscrapers possible, because without that safety brake, nobody would have trusted their lives to a suspended platform dozens of stories above the ground. 6. Ancient Mesopotamians used stone for pillows, but not for comfort, for protection. In the dry, hot climate of ancient Mesopotamia, insects were a constant nighttime threat, particularly scorpions and beetles that could crawl into ears. Stone or wooden headrests elevated the head and kept it away from the ground where these creatures roamed. Archaeological excavations have uncovered these hard pillows in burial sites throughout the region, often carved with intricate designs or inscriptions. Only the wealthy could afford cushioned versions, stuffed with soft materials like feathers or reeds. In ancient China, ceramic pillows served a different purpose entirely. Traditional medicine held that soft pillows blocked the flow of energy and blood to the brain, while hard porcelain pillows kept the head cool and preserved one's qi overnight. These ceramic pillows were often painted with beautiful scenes or calligraphy, turning an uncomfortable sleeping surface into an art object. The modern soft pillow we consider essential for sleep is actually a relatively recent luxury in human history. 7. Modern chewing gum traces its origins to Thomas Adams, a New York inventor who was actually trying to create a cheap substitute for rubber. In the 1860s, Adams was working with chicle, a natural tree sap from Mexico brought to him by exiled Mexican General Antonio López de Santa Anna. Santa Anna believed chicle could replace rubber in manufacturing, potentially making both men wealthy. Adams spent months trying to vulcanize chicle into useful rubber products, experimenting with carriage tires, rain boots, and toys. Every attempt failed. Frustrated and nearly bankrupt, Adams was about to throw his entire chicle supply into the East River when he noticed a young girl in a store buying paraffin wax chewing gum. He remembered that Mexicans had chewed raw chicle for centuries. Adams boiled some chicle, hand-rolled it into small balls, and convinced a local drugstore to sell them. The unflavored chicle gum sold immediately. He opened a factory and began adding flavors. Licorice became his first success, marketed as Adams New York Chewing Gum No. 1. According to company histories, Adams later invented gum-making machinery that could mass-produce consistent pieces. His failed rubber substitute became the foundation of the modern chewing gum industry. William Wrigley Jr. later built an empire on Adams's basic chicle formula, adding mint flavoring and aggressive marketing to create brands that still dominate today. 8. The dining fork was once considered an instrument of the devil. When Catherine de' Medici brought forks from Italy to France in the 1500s for her wedding to Henry II, French clergy and nobles were scandalized. They argued that God had given humans fingers to eat with, and using a fork was an insult to divine design. The fork was associated with femininity, vanity, and moral weakness. Real men, the thinking went, ate with their hands or perhaps a knife. In England, the situation was even worse. Forks didn't gain acceptance until the 17th century, and even then faced resistance. Thomas Coriate, who introduced forks to England after traveling through Italy, was mocked by his contemporaries who nicknamed him Furcifer, Latin for fork-bearer, but also slang for scoundrel. The Byzantine Empire had been using forks since the 4th century, but it took over 1,000 years for the utensil to travel west and gain widespread acceptance. By the 18th century, forks had finally become standard in Western European dining, but the long delay shows how cultural attitudes can resist even the most practical innovations. 9. Niels Bohlin invented the 3-point seat belt in 1959 while working as a safety engineer for Volvo, and the company made a decision that would save countless lives. They gave the patent away for free. Bohlin's design, the familiar V-shaped belt that crosses the chest and lap, distributed crash forces across the strongest parts of the body. Before this, cars used simple lap belts that often caused internal injuries during collisions, or no belts at all. According to Volvo's calculations, Bohlin's invention has saved over 1 million lives since its introduction. The company could have made billions by licensing the technology exclusively, but Volvo's leadership decided that something this important to human safety should be available to every automaker in the world. They opened the patent in the interest of public welfare, allowing any manufacturer to use the design without paying royalties. It's estimated that the 3-point seatbelt reduces the risk of fatal injury by 50% for front seat passengers. The design itself has remained virtually unchanged for over 60 years, a testament to getting something right the first time. 10. The QWERTY keyboard layout we use today was deliberately designed to slow typists down, and we're still using it decades after the reason disappeared. In the 1870s, early typewriters had mechanical keys on metal arms that would jam if an operator typed too quickly, especially when hitting keys close together in rapid succession. Christopher Latham Scholes, who designed the QWERTY layout, intentionally separated commonly used letter pairs across the keyboard to reduce jamming. For instance, TH and HE are spaced far apart, forcing typists to alternate hands and slow their rhythm. According to the Smithsonian Institution, this layout became standard when Remington began manufacturing Scholes's typewriter in 1873. By the time electric typewriters and computers eliminated the jamming problem entirely, millions of people had already learned QWERTY, creating what economists call path dependence, a situation where we're locked into a suboptimal solution because the switching cost is too high. Alternative layouts like Dvorak, designed in the 1930s for maximum typing efficiency, have proven faster in studies but never gained traction. We're all typing on a keyboard specifically engineered to solve a problem that stopped existing before most of us were born. 11. Tea bags were invented by accident when a New York tea merchant made a costly packaging mistake. In 1908, Thomas Sullivan began sending samples of tea to potential customers in small silk pouches, intending for recipients to remove the tea before brewing. But his customers, unfamiliar with this packaging, simply dunked the entire silk pouch into hot water and discovered it worked beautifully. The tea steeped just as well, and cleanup became far easier. Sullivan quickly realized his error had created something valuable and began producing his tea bags intentionally. Early versions used silk or gauze, but during World War I, material shortages forced manufacturers to switch to paper. The rectangular paper tea bag appeared in the 1940s, and the familiar tag and string design followed shortly after. According to the UK Tea and Infusions Association, tea bags now account for 96% of tea sold in Britain, a nation famous for its tea culture. What's remarkable is that this entire global industry, worth billions, emerged from a simple misunderstanding about how to use a product sample. 12. Walter Hunt invented the safety pin in 3 hours to pay off a $15 debt, then sold the patent for $400, dramatically undervaluing one of history's most enduring designs. Hunt, A prolific but financially unsuccessful inventor in 1849 New York needed money quickly when a friend loaned him $15. Twisting a piece of wire while thinking, Hunt bent it into a shape that would spring closed and shield its sharp point behind a protective clasp. The design was instantly recognizable as useful. It could fasten fabric securely without the danger of pricking the user, unlike straight pins. Hunt patented the design and immediately sold it to W.R. Grace and Company for $400 to settle his debts and make a small profit. He had no idea his 3-hour invention would become ubiquitous worldwide. The basic safety pin design remains nearly identical today, manufactured by the billions. Hunt never made another penny from it, while the companies that bought his patent earned fortunes. It's a stark reminder that great inventions don't always make their inventors wealthy. 13. Wristwatches were considered feminine jewelry for decades. Men wore pocket watches on chains, viewing wristwatches as delicate accessories unsuitable for masculine attire. This changed dramatically during World War I, when soldiers on the battlefield discovered that fumbling for a pocket watch while under fire or operating equipment was impractical and dangerous. Military officers began strapping pocket watches to their wrists with leather bands for quick access. Watch manufacturers noticed this improvised solution and began producing purpose-built wristwatches with radium-painted dials for reading in darkness and protective wire guards over the crystal. After the war, returning soldiers continued wearing wristwatches, and the style rapidly became mainstream for men. By the 1920s, wristwatch sales had overtaken pocket watches entirely. The shift represents one of the fastest reversals of a fashion stigma in history. What had been mocked as effeminate became a symbol of military service and modern practicality within a decade. Today, pocket watches survive mainly as vintage curiosities or formal accessories, while the wristwatch evolved into everything from basic timekeepers to sophisticated smartwatches. 14. The disposable paper towel exists because a batch of toilet paper came out wrong. In 1907, the Scott Paper Company manufactured a batch of paper that emerged far too thick and wrinkled to be sold as toilet tissue. Rather than throw away the entire production run, the company's resourceful management decided to cut the heavy paper into individual sheets and market it as disposable toweling. They pitched it to schools and public facilities as a more hygienic alternative to shared cloth towels, which could spread diseases like tuberculosis. The timing proved perfect. The early 1900s saw growing public awareness of germ theory and sanitation, making disposable products increasingly appealing. Scott marketed their product as Sani Towels and emphasized their single-use hygiene benefits. The concept caught on, particularly in institutional settings like schools, restaurants, and factories. By the 1930s, paper towels had entered home kitchens, and companies were manufacturing them intentionally rather than by accident. Today, Americans use approximately 13 billion pounds of paper towels annually. A manufacturing error that could have been a financial disaster instead created an entirely new product category. 15. Early vacuum cleaners were so massive they couldn't fit inside homes. They were horse-drawn contraptions that stayed outside while servants fed hoses through windows. British inventor Hubert Cecil Booth designed one of the first powered vacuum cleaners in 1901 after watching a demonstration of a device that blew dust off train seats. Booth realized suction would work better than blowing and built a petrol-powered machine so large it had to be pulled by horses through the streets of London. Wealthy clients would hire Booth's company, and uniformed workers would park the machine outside, unroll long hoses, and feed them through windows to vacuum interior rooms. The machine was painted bright red and caused such a spectacle that crowds would gather to watch. According to historical records, even royalty used Booth's service. He vacuumed Westminster Abbey before King Edward VII's coronation in 1902. The first truly portable electric vacuum cleaner was invented by James Murray Spangler, a janitor in Canton, Ohio, in 1907. He built it from a pillowcase, fan, and rotating brush, then sold the patent to William Hoover, whose name became synonymous with vacuum cleaners. The evolution from horse-drawn suction machines to handheld devices took less than 2 decades. 16. Buttons were purely decorative for thousands of years before anyone thought to use them as fasteners. Archaeological evidence shows ornamental buttons on clothing in ancient Indus Valley civilization around 2000 BCE, made from shells, bone, or precious metals. These buttons were sewn onto garments as status symbols or adornments, serving no functional purpose. Clothing was fastened with pins, ties, or wrapping techniques instead. The revolutionary change came in 13th century Germany when someone invented the buttonhole, a reinforced slit in fabric that a button could pass through and hold. This seemingly simple innovation transformed clothing design entirely. Suddenly, garments could fit the body more closely and be adjusted for different body types. Buttons with buttonholes allowed for the development of tailored clothing, particularly doublets and other fitted men's garments that shaped European fashion for centuries. According to costume historians, the button and buttonhole combination was so valuable that sumptuary laws in medieval Europe sometimes restricted who could wear buttons, reserving them for the upper classes. The Industrial Revolution brought button-making machines in the 1800s, making buttons affordable for everyone. Modern buttons come in countless materials: plastic, metal, wood, shell, ceramic. But the fundamental mechanism of a button fitting through a buttonhole hasn't changed in 700 years. It remains one of the simplest and most reliable fastening systems ever invented. 17. When Sylvan Goldman introduced shopping carts to his Humpty Dumpty supermarket chain in Oklahoma City in 1937, customers flatly refused to use them. Men thought the carts looked like baby strollers and damaged their masculine image, while women felt the carts suggested they were too weak to carry a shopping basket. Goldman had invented the cart by mounting 2 wire baskets on a folding frame with wheels after noticing shoppers would stop buying once their handheld baskets became too heavy. Despite the logical benefits, his customers avoided the new carts entirely, leaving them unused in corners of the store. Goldman's solution was brilliant. He hired models of various ages and genders to push shopping carts around the store, pretending to shop. He stationed greeters at the entrance to offer carts and explain how the professional shoppers were using them. Within weeks, the psychology shifted. Customers began to feel left out if they weren't using carts like everyone else. By the 1940s, shopping carts had become standard in American supermarkets, fundamentally changing retail by allowing customers to buy more in a single trip. Goldman's invention enabled the modern self-service supermarket model. 18. During World War II, Norwegians wore paper clips on their lapels as a silent symbol of resistance against Nazi occupation. The simple gesture began in the autumn of 1940, shortly after the German invasion, when overt opposition was extremely dangerous. The paperclip represented binding together and resisting oppression, multiple individual wires united into one strong unit. Because the paperclip was invented by Norwegian Johan Wahler, though this attribution is disputed, many Norwegians believed it at the time. It also symbolized Norwegian innovation and national pride. The Germans eventually caught on and began arresting people for wearing paperclips, but the symbol had already achieved its purpose, demonstrating that resistance persisted even under brutal occupation. What makes this even more remarkable is that the familiar gem paperclip design we use today actually emerged in the 1890s in England and was never formally patented, despite being one of the most elegantly simple designs ever created. The double loop construction provides just enough spring tension to hold papers together without bending permanently. Despite numerous attempts to improve the paperclip, the gem design has remained essentially unchanged for over 130 years. 19. The first mechanical alarm clock could only ring at one specific time: 4 a.m., Levi Hutchins of Concord, New Hampshire, invented it in 1787 because his job required him to wake before dawn, and he couldn't trust himself to rise naturally. His clock was a simple modification of a standard timepiece. When the clock hands reached 4 kalan, they would trigger a bell mechanism that would ring until manually shut off. The device worked perfectly for Hutchins' personal needs, but he never patented or commercialized it because he assumed nobody else would want to wake at exactly 4 a.m. every single day. He was right. A fixed-time alarm clock had limited appeal. The first adjustable mechanical alarm clock wasn't patented until 1847 by French inventor Antoine Redier, 60 years later. These early adjustable alarms were expensive and remained luxury items until the early 1900s, when mass production made them affordable for working-class families. The alarm clock fundamentally changed human sleep patterns and work schedules, enabling the rigid timing requirements of industrial factory work. Before reliable alarm clocks, many workers hired knocker-uppers, people who would tap on bedroom windows with long poles to wake clients at agreed-upon times. 20. German housewife Melita Benz invented the paper coffee filter in 1908 because she was tired of bitter, gritty coffee and stained porcelain filters that were difficult to clean. Sitting at her kitchen table, she took a piece of blotting paper from her son's school notebook, punctured holes in the bottom of a brass pot, and placed the paper inside as a liner. When she poured hot water through ground coffee held in the paper, the result was cleaner, smoother coffee without sediment or over-extracted bitterness. The paper absorbed oils that caused bitterness while allowing the essential flavors through. Benz immediately recognized the commercial potential and, with 73, Pfennigs in startup capital, founded a company with her husband to manufacture paper filters. She received an imperial patent and began demonstrating her invention at trade fairs. According to company records, the business sold 200 filters in its first year. Through 2 world wars and numerous business challenges, the Melita brand survived and thrived. Today, the company Benz founded remains a major international business, and her basic paper filter design, refined but essentially unchanged, is still the most popular method for brewing coffee worldwide. It's a perfect example of how solving a small personal frustration can lead to a lasting global innovation. 21. The term Scotch in Scotch tape came from an insult. In 1925, Richard Drew, a young engineer at 3M, invented masking tape for auto body shops that needed to create clean paint lines on 2-tone cars. His first version had adhesive only along the edges to save money, and when the tape failed during painting, a frustrated body shop worker snapped, "Take this tape back to your stingy Scotch bosses and tell them to put more adhesive on it." The term Scotch was 1920s slang for cheap or stingy, referencing the stereotype about Scottish frugality. Rather than being offended, 3M embraced the nickname. When Drew invented transparent cellophane tape in 1930, which would become Scotch tape, the company deliberately used Scotch in the branding, turning an insult into one of the most recognizable product names in history. That transparent tape solved a real problem during the Great Depression. People needed to repair torn documents, books, and household items cheaply. Scotch tape became essential for mending rather than replacing. The invention also revolutionized office work and gift wrapping. Today, 3M manufactures over 400 varieties of tape, but they all trace back to Drew's innovations and that one irritated complaint. 22. Plastic wrap was discovered accidentally in 1949 when a lab worker at Dow Chemical couldn't scrub a strange greenish film off his laboratory beakers. Ralph Wiley, working in the lab, had been experimenting with a new compound when he noticed this mysterious residue that clung stubbornly to glass surfaces. The material was polyvinylidene chloride, and it had an unusual property. It stuck to itself and other surfaces while remaining completely transparent. Dow researchers realized this clingy, clear film could protect food by creating an airtight seal. The company developed it into a consumer product called Saran Wrap, marketing it as the modern way to keep food fresh. According to Dow's records, Saran Wrap was initially used by the military to protect fighter planes and other equipment from corrosive sea spray during World War II. After the war ended, Dow pivoted to consumer markets, introducing it to households in 1953. The product transformed food storage. For the first time, people could see their leftovers while keeping them sealed from air and moisture. Modern plastic wraps use different formulations than Wiley's original discovery, but they all owe their existence to that stubborn film on a laboratory beaker. 23. Josephine Cochrane invented the dishwasher in 1886, not because she was tired of washing dishes herself. She had servants for that, but because she was tired of servants chipping her expensive china. Cochrane, a wealthy Illinois socialite, loved entertaining and owned an heirloom collection of fine china that dated back to the 1600s. After yet another dinner party ended with broken dishes, she declared, "If nobody else is going to invent a dishwashing machine, I'll do it myself." Despite having no mechanical experience, she measured her dishes and designed wire compartments that would hold them securely in place. Water would spray up from below, powered by a motor, while the dishes remained stationary in their racks. She built the first prototype in her shed with help from a mechanic. The machine worked beautifully, cleaning dishes faster and more gently than human hands. Cochrane patented her invention and founded a company to manufacture it, targeting hotels and restaurants where large-scale dishwashing was a constant challenge. She won awards at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. Though home dishwashers wouldn't become common until the 1950s, Cochrane's company eventually became KitchenAid, and her basic design principles, spray arms, dish racks, water jets, remain standard in every modern dishwasher. 24. Leonardo da Vinci conceptually described contact lenses in 1508, over 350 years before anyone could actually make them work. In his Codex of the Eye, Da Vinci sketched the idea of altering corneal power by submerging the eye in water or placing a water-filled glass hemisphere directly against it. His drawings showed remarkable understanding of optics, but the technology to create practical lenses didn't exist. The first wearable contact lenses appeared in Germany in the 1880s, made from heavy blown glass that covered the entire eye, not just the cornea. According to medical records, patients could only wear these early glass lenses for a few hours before pain and irritation became unbearable. The lenses contained no oxygen permeability, so the cornea would suffocate. In 1936, optometrist William Feinblum introduced plastic scleral lenses that were lighter but still uncomfortable. The breakthrough came in 1948 when California optician Kevin Tuohy created the first corneal lens, a smaller lens that sat only on the cornea rather than covering the entire visible eye. Modern soft contact lenses, invented in 1960s, Czechoslovakia, using a hydrogel that could absorb water, finally made contacts comfortable for extended wear. Today's lenses represent the fulfillment of Da Vinci's 500-year-old vision. 25. The wire hanger was invented out of pure frustration in 1903 when Albert Parkhouse arrived at work at the Timberlake Wire and Novelty Company in Jackson, Michigan, and found all the coat hooks taken. Annoyed, Parkhouse grabbed a piece of wire, bent it into two ovals opposite each other, twisted the ends together to create a hook, and hung his coat on it. His improvised solution worked so well that his employer recognized its potential and patented the design, under the company's name, not Parkhouse's. Parkhouse never received royalties or recognition for his invention, despite it becoming one of the most manufactured objects in history. The wire hanger's simplicity made it incredibly cheap to produce, and it revolutionized the dry cleaning industry by providing an easy way to return cleaned garments. The basic shoulder-shaped design hasn't changed significantly in 120 years, though variations include pants hangers, padded hangers, and hangers with clips. Interestingly, the wire hanger was inspired by Thomas Jefferson's design for a rotating closet device that could hold multiple garments, though Jefferson's version was far more elaborate. Parkhouse stripped the concept down to its absolute essence: wire bent to hold weight. Billions are manufactured annually, and most end up accumulating in closets or being recycled into other uses. 26. The soft looped cotton towel that we consider standard today was first developed in Turkey during the 17th century and spread gradually through European trade routes. Turkish towels, known as peştemals, were originally flat woven without the thick loops, but Turkish weavers discovered that incorporating loops into the weave created a fabric that absorbed water far more effectively. The loops increased surface area dramatically, allowing the fabric to hold more moisture. These towels were initially used in hammams, Turkish baths, where their absorbency and quick drying properties made them ideal. Before Turkish towels reached Europe, most people dried themselves with rough linen cloths or coarse woven fabrics that were minimally absorbent and often scratchy. According to textile trade records, Turkish towels became highly prized luxury goods in 17th and 18th century Europe. British manufacturers began producing similar looped towels in the Victorian era, and the term Turkish toweling became synonymous with quality absorbent fabric. The Industrial Revolution enabled mass production of towels, transforming them from luxury items to everyday necessities. Modern towels use precisely engineered cotton or bamboo loops, sometimes with moisture-wicking synthetics blended in, and are manufactured in standardized sizes for specific uses. Bath towels, hand towels, washcloths, beach towels. The towel represents a simple innovation, adding loops to woven fabric that solved the problem of efficient drying so effectively that the basic design hasn't required improvement in 4 centuries. 27. Velcro exists because Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral went for a walk with his dog in the Alps in 1941 and came home covered in burrs. Rather than simply pulling them off in annoyance, de Mestral examined the burrs under a microscope and discovered they were covered in tiny hooks that clung to the loops in fabric and fur. He realized this natural mechanism could be replicated artificially to create a fastener. The name Velcro combines the French words velours, velvet, and crochet, hook. Developing a manufacturing process took nearly 8 years of experimentation. De Mestral needed to find materials that could form thousands of tiny hooks and loops that would withstand repeated use. He eventually succeeded using nylon, which could be heated and formed into the required shapes. The first Velcro factory opened in France in the late 1950s. Initially, fashion designers dismissed it as too ugly for clothing, and it found its early market in industrial applications. NASA's use of Velcro in space missions in the 1960s transformed its image from unglamly industrial product to high-tech innovation. Today, Velcro fasteners are everywhere, in shoes, clothing, medical devices, and countless other applications, all because someone paid attention to how a burr sticks to fabric. 28. Before doorknobs existed, people used wooden latches, bars, or simply strings to open and close doors. The turning knob lock was a significant mechanical innovation that combined security with convenience. The first patent for a doorknob lock mechanism was granted in 1878 to an African-American inventor named Osborne Dorsey. Very little is known about Dorsey's life beyond his patent. He lived in an era when black inventors rarely received recognition or credit for their work, and historical records are sparse. His doorknob design featured an internal mechanism that could be locked and unlocked with a key from the outside, while also allowing the knob to turn freely from the inside for easy exit. This became the standard doorknob configuration for homes and businesses. Before Dorsey's innovation, door security and ease of operation were separate concerns. You could have a lock or a simple handle, but combining them elegantly was challenging. The genius of the turning knob is that it naturally fits the human hand's rotating motion, making doors intuitive to operate. Modern door knobs still follow the basic principles Dorsey established, though smart locks and electronic systems are gradually replacing mechanical locks in many applications. 29. Salt shakers, as we know them, only became practical in 1911 after the Morton Salt Company added magnesium carbonate as an anti-caking agent. Before this innovation, salt absorbed moisture from the air and clumped into solid masses that wouldn't pour. Households kept salt in open bowls called salt cellars and used small spoons to scoop it. The chemistry behind salt's clumping is simple. Salt is hygroscopic, meaning it attracts and absorbs water molecules from humid air. These water molecules dissolve some of the salt, which then recrystallizes, binding grains together into rocks. Anti-caking agents work by coating individual salt grains with a water-resistant substance that prevents moisture absorption. Morton's famous slogan, "When it rains, it pours," introduced in 1914, directly referenced this innovation. Their salt would pour freely even in humid conditions when competitors' salt would clump. The Morton Umbrella Girl logo, showing a girl with an umbrella in the rain while salt pours freely from a container under her arm, became one of America's most enduring advertising symbols. This seemingly minor chemical addition transformed salt from a mineral that required careful storage and handling into a convenient, free-flowing seasoning. The shift from salt cellars to salt shakers also had an unexpected effect on sodium consumption. Easier pouring led to more liberal use of salt in cooking and at the table. 30. Before home freezers became common in the 1940s, ice cube trays were patented in 1914 but remained curiosities because nobody had reliable ways to freeze water at home. Prior to mechanical refrigeration, ice was a seasonal commodity harvested from frozen lakes and rivers during winter, then stored in underground ice houses insulated with sawdust. This ice industry employed thousands of workers who cut massive ice blocks, transported them by horse and rail, and delivered them to homes where they'd be placed in insulated ice boxes, the predecessors to refrigerators. Large blocks melted slowly, keeping food cool for days or weeks. The ice trade was so important that the invention of mechanical refrigeration in the late 1800s caused economic upheaval, eliminating entire industries overnight. According to historical records, New England shipped ice as far as India and the Caribbean in the mid-1800s, insulated in ships' holds with sawdust. The first ice cube tray patent, granted to Fred Wolf in 1914, featured simple metal compartments placed in the freezer section of early refrigerators. As home refrigerators became standard appliances by the 1950s, ice cubes transformed from expensive luxuries to everyday conveniences. The plastic ice cube tray with a lever release mechanism didn't appear until 1965, eliminating the need to twist metal trays to pop out frozen cubes. Today, automatic ice makers built into refrigerators have made even ice cube trays seem quaint. 31. Plastic bags were invented in Sweden in 1959 by engineer Sten Gustaf Thulin as an environmentally friendly alternative to paper bags. The irony is almost unbearable. Thulin designed the thin plastic bag specifically to be reused many times, believing it would help save trees and reduce the waste created by single-use paper bags. His son has stated in interviews that his father would be horrified to see how modern society treats plastic bags as disposable items used once and thrown away. Thulin's original concept was that households would own a few sturdy plastic bags and use them for years, folding them into compact shapes when not in use. The plastic material required less energy to produce than paper and wouldn't tear when wet. When plastic bags spread internationally through the 1970s and 80s, the cheap production cost and convenience led retailers to give them away freely, and consumers had no incentive to reuse them. According to environmental research, humans now produce roughly 1 trillion plastic bags annually, and they've become one of the most visible forms of pollution, clogging waterways, breaking into microplastics, and harming marine life. Many countries have now banned single-use plastic bags or implemented taxes to discourage their use, returning, in a sense, to Thulin's original vision of reusable shopping bags. 32. Fanny Farmer revolutionized cooking in 1896 by introducing standardized measurements to recipes. Before her cookbook, the Boston Cooking School Cookbook, recipes used vague, inconsistent measurements like a teacup of flour, a handful of sugar, or a piece of butter the size of an egg. The problem was that teacups varied in size, hands came in different sizes, and eggs weren't standardized either. Cooking was as much intuition and experience as following instructions, making it difficult for beginners to succeed. Farmer, who directed the Boston Cooking School, insisted on precise level measurements. Exactly 1 cup, exactly 1 tablespoon, exactly 1 teaspoon. Her cookbook included detailed instructions for measuring. Flour should be scooped and leveled with a knife, brown sugar should be packed, liquids should be measured at eye level. This scientific approach to cooking was revolutionary and somewhat controversial. Some experienced cooks felt it removed the art and instinct from cooking. But Farmer's system made cooking accessible to anyone who could follow directions, regardless of prior experience. Her cookbook sold millions of copies and went through numerous editions. The standard measuring cup set, with 1 cup, half cup, third cup, and quarter cup measures, emerged directly from Farmer's influence. Today, precise measurements are so fundamental to cooking that it's hard to imagine a time when recipes didn't include them. 33. The earliest sunglasses were worn by Inuit peoples, who carved them from bone, ivory, or wood with narrow slits to look through. These weren't for fashion or even primarily for sun protection. In the way we think of it, they were designed to reduce snowblindness, a painful condition caused by intense UV light reflecting off snow and ice. The slits severely limited the amount of light entering the eyes while still allowing vision. Archaeological evidence suggests these snow goggles date back thousands of years. In medieval China, judges wore sunglasses made from smoky quartz, but not to protect their eyes from light. Instead, they used darkened lenses to hide their facial expressions during trials, preventing observers from detecting their reactions to testimony or evidence. This gave judges an impassive, inscrutable appearance that reinforced their authority. Modern sunglasses, as we know them, tinted glass lenses that reduce glare while maintaining clear vision, weren't developed until the 1920s, when Foster Grant began mass-producing them in America. The U.S. military commissioned Bausch and Lomb to create aviator sunglasses in the 1930s to protect pilots' eyes from high-altitude glare. Ray-Ban aviators became commercially available in 1937, and sunglasses gradually transitioned from functional equipment to fashion accessories in the decades that followed. 34. Credit cards began in 1950 not as plastic cards, but as cardboard charge cards issued by Diners Club to 200 people who could use them at 27 restaurants in New York City. Frank McNamara conceived the idea after a business dinner when he realized he'd forgotten his wallet and had to call his wife to bring cash. An embarrassing situation that inspired him to create a payment system that didn't require carrying money. The Diners Club card worked on a charge system. Cardholders paid an annual fee and then charged meals to their account, paying the full balance at the end of each month. Restaurants paid Diners Club a percentage of each transaction. Within a year, membership expanded to 20,000 cardholders. American Express and Carte. Blanche quickly followed with competing cards. The first credit card made of plastic with a magnetic stripe wasn't introduced until 1960 by American Express, though Bank of America's bank, AmeriCard, which later became Visa, pioneered the revolving credit model in 1958, allowing customers to carry balances month to month while paying interest. According to financial records, credit cards didn't become mainstream consumer products until the 1970s, when computerized authorization systems made transactions fast and secure. Today, there are over 1 billion credit cards in circulation in the United States alone, more than 3 per person, and the original Diners Club cardboard card concept has evolved into a global digital payment ecosystem. 35. Douglas Engelbart invented the computer mouse in 1964 with the help of Bill English, and it was literally a wooden block with 2 metal wheels. Engelbart wasn't trying to invent a consumer product, he was researching ways for humans to interact more naturally with computers as part of an ambitious project to augment human intellect. At the time, computers were controlled by typing commands on keyboards or using light pens that touched the screen. Engelbart's team needed a device that could move a cursor smoothly around a display and point to text or graphics. They tested several designs, including trackballs, light pens, and joysticks, but the wheeled device, which Engelbart called an XY position indicator, proved fastest and most intuitive. The wheels inside detected motion in 2 dimensions as the user moved the device across a surface. The team nicknamed it a mouse because the cord extending from it resembled a tail. Engelbart publicly demonstrated the mouse at a computer conference in 1968 in what's now called the mother of all demos, a presentation that also introduced video conferencing, hypertext, and collaborative editing. Despite the breakthrough, the mouse didn't become commercially successful until the 1980s, when Apple included one with the Macintosh computer. Engelbart's patent expired before mice became widespread, so he earned almost nothing from his invention that revolutionized human-computer interaction. 36. The fountain pen was first patented in 1827 by Petrache Poenaru, a Romanian inventor studying in Paris who designed a pen using a quill barrel as an ink reservoir. Before Poenaru's innovation, writing required repeatedly dipping a quill or metal nib into an inkwell, an interruption every few words that made writing slow and cumbersome. Earlier inventors had attempted self-filling pens, but their designs clogged constantly or leaked ink everywhere. Poenaru's key insight was creating a sealed reservoir with a valve system that allowed controlled ink flow to the nib. According to patent records, his design used a simple feed mechanism. Capillary action drew ink from the reservoir to the nib tip at a rate matching the writer's pace. The fountain pen gradually improved throughout the 19th century with the addition of replaceable ink cartridges and more reliable feed systems. Lewis Waterman perfected the design in the 1880s with a capillary feed that prevented both flooding and starvation of ink. Fountain pens became status symbols. Executives, lawyers, and professionals signed important documents with elegant fountain pens in acts with ceremonial weight. Modern fountain pens still use Poenaru's basic concept: a reservoir, a feed system, and a nib, though materials have evolved from gold and iridium nibs to stainless steel and plastic. Despite being largely replaced by ballpoint pens for everyday writing, fountain pens persist among enthusiasts who appreciate the smooth, expressive writing they provide and the ritual of filling them with bottled ink. 37. The zipper was invented in 1893 by Whitcomb Judson, who called it the class blocker and marketed it as a fastener for shoes, but it was a commercial failure. Judson's original design was clunky, jammed frequently, and would spring open unexpectedly. He exhibited it at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, but gained little interest. The zipper might have disappeared into obscurity if not for Gideon Sundback, a Swedish-American engineer hired by Judson's company, who completely redesigned the mechanism in 1913. Sunback increased the number of fastening elements, changed their shape, and developed machinery to manufacture the improved design efficiently. His zipper was reliable, smooth, and stayed closed. According to company records, the breakthrough came when B.F. Goodrich used Sunback's zipper on rubber boots and coined the name zipper because of the sound it made. The U.S. Navy adopted zippers for flight suits in the 1930s because buttons could catch on equipment, and the military's endorsement boosted confidence in the product. Levi Strauss began using zippers on jeans in the 1950s, making them mainstream in casual clothing. Today, zippers are so ubiquitous that they're virtually invisible. We rarely think about the complex mechanism of interlocking teeth that opens and closes thousands of times without failing. The evolution from Judson's failed clasp locker to Sunback's reliable zipper took 20 years of refinement. 38. The Bic Crystal pen, released in 1950, became the best-selling pen in history, with over 100 billion sold worldwide, roughly 13 pens for every person on Earth. Marcel Bich purchased the patent rights to Laszlo Biro's ballpoint pen design and obsessively refined it to reduce manufacturing costs while maintaining reliability. His key innovation was the transparent hexagonal barrel, which served multiple purposes. It allowed users to see remaining ink levels. It prevented the pen from rolling off desks because of its flat sides, and it was incredibly cheap to manufacture from clear plastic. According to company Histories, Bish tested over 4,000 prototypes before settling on the final design. The pen's simple brass ball and socket tip, ink reservoir, and ventilation hole in the barrel make it a masterpiece of minimalist engineering. The crystal pen costs pennies to produce, sells for under $1 in most markets, and writes for approximately 3 kilometers before running out of ink. The Museum of Modern Art in New York includes the Bic Crystal in its permanent design collection, recognizing it as an iconic example of democratic design, a well-crafted object accessible to almost everyone. Despite countless competitors and supposed improvements, the basic crystal design remains virtually unchanged after more than 70 years, proving that sometimes simple solutions are the most enduring. 39. The earliest known scissors date to approximately 1500 BCE in ancient Egypt, crafted from a single piece of bronze bent into a spring shape, like oversized tweezers rather than the cross-bladed scissors we know today. These spring scissors had 2 blades connected at one end, and squeezing them brought the blades together to cut. They were expensive, difficult to manufacture, and required significant hand strength to operate. The revolutionary change came around 100 AD when Romans invented cross-bladed scissors with a pivot point, 2 separate blades joined by a screw or rivet in the center. This pivot design required far less force to operate and allowed for much more precise cutting. Archaeological excavations at Pompeii have uncovered Roman scissors that look remarkably similar to modern scissors. The basic design, 2 blades crossing at a pivot point with finger holes at one end, has remained essentially unchanged for nearly 2,000 years. Different scissors evolved for specialized purposes: tailor's shears with long blades, surgical scissors with precise tips, pinking shears with serrated edges, but the fundamental mechanism never needed improvement. It's a testament to Roman engineering that they solved the problem of mechanically cutting so perfectly that millennia of subsequent innovation couldn't improve upon their basic design. 40. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He perfected it for commercial use. Scientists, including Humphrey Davy and Joseph Swan, had created working electric lights decades earlier, but their designs burned out quickly, consumed too much power, or cost too much to manufacture. Edison's systematic approach involved testing thousands of materials for the filament, the element inside the bulb that glows when heated by electric current. He tried platinum, various metals, and even fishing line before discovering that carbonized bamboo fiber and later treated cotton thread could glow for over 1 in 200 hours. Edison's real genius was creating an entire electrical system around the bulb: power generation, distribution networks, sockets, switches, and meters. According to records from his Menlo Park laboratory, Edison's team conducted over 3,000 experiments before achieving a commercially viable design in 1879. He understood that inventing the bulb was pointless without infrastructure to power it, so he developed the complete system for electric lighting. Swan actually beat Edison in demonstrating a working bulb, publicly, but Edison's superior business, acumen, and comprehensive approach to electrical systems made him the name associated with electric light. The two inventors later merged their companies. Edison's incandescent design, refined over the following decades, remained the standard for over a century, until LED and fluorescent technologies finally offered more efficient alternatives in the early 2000s. 41. The first friction match was invented in 1826 by British chemist John Walker, who discovered it completely by accident. Walker was experimenting with chemicals for a different purpose when he noticed that a wooden stick he'd used for stirring had dried with a hardened blob on the end. When he tried to scrape the blob off by striking it against the floor, the stick burst into flame. Intrigued, Walker realized he'd created a mixture that would ignite through friction. His matches used a combination of antimony sulfide, potassium chlorate, gum arabic, and starch coated on the end of a 3-inch wooden stick. To light them, users would strike the match head against sandpaper or a rough surface. Walker called them friction lights and began selling them through his pharmacy in Stockton-on-Tees. Interestingly, Walker never patented his invention because he believed everyone should have free access to such a useful discovery. Others quickly copied and improved his design, making fortunes while Walker earned nothing. Early matches were dangerous. They could ignite spontaneously, produced toxic fumes, and sometimes exploded. The safety match, which required striking against a special chemical surface, wasn't invented until 1844 in Sweden, making matches much safer to store and use. Walker's accidental discovery eliminated humanity's ancient dependence on maintaining continuous fire or carrying flint and steel. 42. Alessandro Volta invented the first true battery in 1800, called the voltaic pile, and it was elegantly simple. Alternating discs of zinc and copper separated by cloth soaked in brine or diluted acid. When stacked together, these discs generated a continuous electric current through a chemical reaction between the metals and the electrolyte. Before Volta's invention, scientists had only been able to generate static electricity or brief sparks. The voltaic pile provided sustained electrical flow that could power experiments and devices. Volta demonstrated his pile to Napoleon Bonaparte in 1801, and the emperor was so impressed he made Volta a count and awarded him a gold medal. The basic principle Volta discovered, that different metals in chemical solution create electrical potential, underlies every battery invented since. Lead-acid batteries for automobiles appeared in 1859, alkaline batteries in 1949, and lithium-ion batteries in 1991. According to the International Energy Agency, global battery production has increased exponentially, driven by smartphones, laptops, and electric vehicles. Modern lithium-ion batteries store far more energy in smaller spaces than Volta could have imagined, but they still rely on the fundamental chemistry he discovered: metals and electrolytes creating electrical current through chemical reactions. The term volt, the unit measuring electrical potential, honors Volta's contribution. His simple stack of metal discs launched the entire age of portable electrical power. 43. Before rubber erasers existed, people removed pencil marks by rubbing the paper with bread. Stale bread, slightly moistened, would pick up graphite without tearing the paper, though the results were messy and imperfect. In 1770, British chemist Joseph Priestley discovered that a substance brought from South America, which Europeans called caoutchouc, or India rubber, could remove pencil marks much more effectively. Priestley published a footnote in his scientific writings mentioning that rubber was excellently adapted to the purpose of wiping from paper the marks of a black lead pencil. The term rubber actually comes from this erasing action. It rubbed out mistakes. Early rubber erasers had problems. They rotted quickly, smelled terrible, and became gooey in warm weather or brittle in cold. Charles Goodyear's invention of vulcanization in 1839, treating rubber with sulfur and heat to stabilize it, made erasers practical. In 1858, Hyman Lipman patented the idea of attaching an eraser to the end of a pencil, creating the familiar combination we use today. Modern erasers work through a fascinating process. The rubber polymer is slightly sticky and adheres to graphite particles, lifting them from the paper's surface. The eraser debris you brush away is actually bits of rubber embedded with graphite. The discovery transformed writing and drawing. For the first time, mistakes could be corrected cleanly and easily. 44. Stephen Perry of London patented the rubber band in 1845, creating it by slicing rubber tubing into rings. But rubber elasticity had been a scientific curiosity for decades before anyone thought to commercialize it. Natural rubber, harvested from trees in South America and Southeast Asia, had an unusual property. It could stretch to several times its original length and then snap back to its original shape. Early rubber products failed because the material degraded quickly. It melted in heat, cracked in cold, and rotted over time. Charles Goodyear's vulcanization process in 1839, which stabilized rubber by treating it with sulfur, made rubber products durable enough for commercial use. Perry's rubber bands found immediate application in offices and warehouses for bundling papers and packages. According to industrial records, the Alliance Rubber Company, founded in 1923, pioneered mass production of rubber bands in standardized sizes. Rubber bands work through a principle called entropy elasticity. Stretching the rubber aligns its long polymer molecules, which naturally want to return to their tangled, disordered state. This stored energy snaps the band back when released. The world's largest rubber band ball, built over decades by Joel Wall, weighs over 9,000 pounds and contains approximately 700,000 rubber bands. Modern synthetic rubber has largely replaced natural rubber, but the basic product remains unchanged: elastic bands that hold things together temporarily and reversibly. 45. The toggle-style light switch was introduced in 1916 by William J. Newton, and it solved a dangerous problem with early electrical systems. Before toggle switches, people controlled lights by pulling chains connected to sockets or by manually connecting and disconnecting metal contacts, methods that frequently caused electrical shocks or sparks. Newton's toggle switch enclosed the electrical contacts inside a protective housing and a spring-loaded toggle lever broke the circuit cleanly with a distinctive snap that prevented arcing. The toggle design required only a simple flipping motion, making it intuitive even in darkness. Before reliable light switches existed, many people were genuinely afraid of electricity in their homes. The risk of shock was real, and electrical fires were common. The toggle switch made electricity feel safe and controllable. Push-button switches existed earlier, but were considered less reliable because contacts could stick. Newton's toggle switch became the standard American design, though European countries adopted different styles. The familiar light switch plate, usually in neutral colors like white or ivory, became one of the most ubiquitous design elements in interior spaces. Modern variations include dimmer switches, motion sensors, and smart switches controlled by phones, but the basic toggle switch remains popular over a century later because it provides clear, tactile, and audible feedback. You know the light is off when you hear and feel that click. 46. Nail polish originated in ancient China around 3000 BCE, made from a mixture of beeswax, gelatin, egg whites, and colored powders from plants and minerals. According to archaeological evidence, the Zhou dynasty, circa 600 BCE, reserved specific nail colors for royalty. Gold and silver were restricted to the ruling class, while lower classes were forbidden from wearing bright colors on their nails. Ancient Egyptians also colored their nails using henna, with deeper shades indicating higher social status. Cleopatra favored deep red, while Queen Nefertiti reportedly wore ruby red. The modern nail polish we recognize didn't appear until 1932, when Charles Revson founded Revlon and introduced nail enamel using pigments instead of dyes. His innovation used chemistry from the automotive industry. Nitrocellulose lacquers developed for painting cars proved perfect for nails, creating durable, glossy finishes that dried quickly. The invention of liquid nail polish transformed manicures from temporary stains to long-lasting color. The French manicure, despite its name, was invented in 1970s Hollywood to create a natural look that worked with any outfit. Modern nail polish includes UV-cured gel formulas that last weeks, breathable formulas that allow oxygen and moisture through, and non-toxic versions avoiding harmful chemicals like formaldehyde. The nail polish industry generates billions annually, offering thousands of colors and finishes. What began as a status symbol for Chinese emperors is now a form of self-expression accessible to everyone, though the fundamental purpose, decorating fingernails with colored coating, remains unchanged across 5,000 years. 47. The modern paper straw was patented in 1888 by Marvin Stone, who was tired of the ryegrass straws commonly used in the 1880s. These natural straws, cut from actual rye plants, gave beverages an unpleasant grassy taste and would fall apart, leaving sediment in drinks. Stone, who owned a cigarette holder manufacturing company, realized he could roll paper tightly around a pencil, glue the seam, remove the pencil, and create a tube that wouldn't affect flavor. His paper straws were an immediate success in soda fountains and bars. Stone's company refined the design by adding a wax coating to make straws water-resistant without altering drink taste. Paper straws became standard in the early 1900s, used in virtually every establishment serving cold beverages. Then, in the 1960s, plastic straws were introduced. They were cheaper to manufacture, more durable, didn't get soggy, and came in bright colors. Plastic completely replaced paper within a decade. However, environmental concerns about single-use plastic in the 2010s brought paper straws back into fashion, as consumers and businesses sought alternatives to plastic waste. Modern paper straws face the same challenge Stone's original design did, keeping the paper from disintegrating in liquid while avoiding unpleasant taste or texture. The circular journey from natural grass straws to paper to plastic and back to paper spans 130 years and reflects changing priorities from convenience to sustainability. 48. Nathaniel Baldwin invented headphones in 1910 by hand assembling them in his kitchen in Salt Lake City, Utah. Baldwin was an electrical tinkerer with no formal engineering training who needed a way to hear sermons more clearly at his Mormon church. He created a device with two earpieces connected by a headband, each containing small electromagnetic speakers that converted electrical signals into sound. The sound quality was remarkably clear for the era, far superior to the crude listening devices available at the time. Baldwin sent a prototype to the U.S. Navy, which tested them and immediately ordered 100 pairs, then hundreds more. The Navy needed reliable communication equipment for radio operators on ships, and Baldwin's headphones proved perfect for the job. The irony is that Baldwin refused to establish a factory or hire workers because of his religious beliefs about maintaining control over his work. He continued hand-making headphones in his kitchen, fulfilling military contracts one at a time. Eventually, demand overwhelmed his capacity, and he reluctantly established a small manufacturing facility. Baldwin's basic design, cushioned earpieces connected by an adjustable band, remains the template for modern headphones. The technology has advanced from electromagnetic drivers to piezoelectric, electrostatic, and digital systems, and form factors have shrunk to wireless earbuds smaller than fingertips, but all descended from those kitchen-built prototypes Baldwin made for his church. 49. The first modern safety helmet was invented in 1919 by E.W. Bullard for shipyard workers in the United States, inspired by the metal helmets his father wore during World War I. Bullard had served as an Army officer and witnessed how steel helmets protected soldiers from shrapnel and head injuries. When he returned home and joined his family's mining equipment company, he recognized that industrial workers faced similar dangers from falling objects and impacts. Bullard adapted military helmet design for civilian use, creating the hard-boiled hat from steamed canvas, glue, and black paint, materials that were lightweight, strong, and could absorb shock. According to company records, the helmets were initially used by workers building the Hoover Dam and the Golden Gate Bridge, massive construction projects where falls and falling objects posed constant dangers. The design evolved to include suspension systems inside the shell that kept the hard exterior away from the wearer's skull, allowing the helmet to absorb and distribute impact forces. Modern hard hats, made from high-density polyethylene or fiberglass, follow Bullard's basic principles: a hard outer shell, an energy-absorbing suspension system, and a comfortable fit that encourages workers to actually wear them. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, now requires hard hats on construction sites, and they've become powerful symbols of labor and industry. Bullard's company still manufactures safety equipment today, over a century later. 50. The first fire extinguisher was invented in 1723 by Ambrose Godfrey, a London chemist, and it used a rather explosive method. A gunpowder charge detonated inside a container of fire-suppressing liquid, spraying the contents over flames. While effective, Godfrey's device was dangerous. Using an explosion to fight a fire seems counterintuitive, and it required someone to light a fuse before the extinguisher would activate. Despite these flaws, it represented the first attempt to create a portable, immediate response to fires beyond throwing water or sand. Fire extinguisher technology advanced slowly over the next 2 centuries. In 1866, François Carlier invented a hand-pumped extinguisher using water and sodium bicarbonate solution. When operated, the chemicals mixed and created carbon dioxide gas, which pressurized the container and expelled the water through a nozzle. Modern carbon dioxide, CO2 fire extinguishers were standardized in the early 1900s after researchers discovered that CO2 suffocates fires by displacing oxygen without leaving residue or causing water damage. According to fire safety organizations, different types of extinguishers now target specific fire classes: water for ordinary combustibles, CO2 for electrical fires, foam for flammable liquids, and dry chemical for multiple types. The color coding and labeling systems help users quickly identify the right extinguisher for each situation. Every fire extinguisher in use today descends from Godfrey's explosive first attempt to give people a tool to fight fires before they spread out of control. And there you have it, 100 remarkable stories behind the everyday objects that quietly shape our lives. What strikes me most about these stories is how innovation often comes from unexpected places. These objects remind us that the familiar world we take for granted is actually the cumulative result of countless clever solutions, happy accidents, and gradual refinements across generations and cultures. If you enjoyed exploring these hidden histories with me tonight, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the fascinating stories behind everyday things. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.